fisherman's friend. Never be without a friend.
We Qatar Motor Show from the 26th to the 29th of January 2011 at the Doha Exhibition Center.
Now it's time to say good morning to the Sunday Mirror columnist Jamie Breese. He's here to leaf through the morning papers for us.
I'm going to leaf through them.
You've already leafed, actually, let's be honest.
There's been a lot of leafage.
Here are the leaves.
They are the leaves.
Take us through them. We're starting with the Times.
Yes, it's a strange day for sort of news. I think Egypt's pushing everything right up to the sort of top of the headlines, of course, and naturally. But I thought the Times are coming quite late with page 36 with a story about Facebook. We all know what Facebook is. I bet Mark Zuckerberg didn't know when he founded it, but a few years later it would be one of the kind of, one of the great forces behind the winds of change. And this piece, and it's really clever because it's not been in any other papers recently, because of the Chilcot inquiry, the chap who's giving evidence to Gus O'Donnell has recognised finally that Facebook is actually really important, that the Secret Service really should be monitoring this. And of course it tends to be of a slightly older generation. So with all the cuts in government, interestingly enough, they found that they need to recruit younger people to actually sort of,
to understand social
Exactly.
networking and the impact that it can have. Because we have seen extraordinary powers in Egypt, haven't we?
Absolutely.
And how it's managed to gather people together.
I mean, the fires are burning in Egypt. I suspect that Mubarak will be toppled any time now. And it would be amazing to think that, some computer software linking the world together, founded by a student, could have actually been so instrumental in bringing these big changes in the Middle East and possibly other countries, and apparently maybe even England one day.
What revolution?
Well, that's why they're panicking here. Could it be that there's problems going on in England? I don't know. Interesting though, very interesting piece.
Well, listen out for the rumblings. Right, let's take a look at the Daily Telegraph now, and this is kind of a story of real contrast, isn't it? When we're talking about Egypt and what's going on there, and people furious about rising prices and struggling to afford everyday life, and then you get a story like this.
I was speaking to Dr. Wathiq, your previous guest from the Arab Conservative organisation, and I was learning that some of the tank drivers, carrying on what's going on in the Middle East right now, in Egypt in particular, literally pounds, which is one of the lowest salaries. And yet here, backed up by some stories yesterday, Sotheby's and Christie's, I work in the antiques and collectibles market, as you know, record prices. They've had their record years since their history. This is Sotheby's and Christie's worldwide, with Bonhams almost having a record year as well. And it's phenomenal. In hundreds of years, the world art market, people are spending millions. And this piece comes, it's tucked away on page 10. And there's a piece, a Rembrandt, a portrait of a man with arms, akimbo. It's a long name, slightly strange. And it's got the price tag of £29.5 million. Interestingly enough, this is really quite small beer compared to some of the artworks recently. There's a vase, was bought from China, was bought by a Chinese business person for, I think it was around about £40 million just a couple of months ago. So people, basically this is indicative of what's going on right at the top. People have millions and millions to spend, and there's other people really suffering. It's a very strange chasm which is opening up, and the world art market is showing that in its brutal, clarity.
It is extraordinary stuff, and yet, these are treasures to be looked after as well, aren't they? And to be valued. So it's a very tricky one. And let's take a quick look at the Sun before we end. And this is yesterday we saw Christopher Farrell in court, and remind us of who he was.
Yes, I avidly watched The Apprentice this year in particular. I watched every single episode, and he was my hero.
Do you feel let down?
I do feel let down. He was the nice guy. Everyone said he's the nice...
We should say, Chris Farrell, he was found guilty of fraud, wasn't he? Mortgage fraud. And he was sentenced yesterday to a suspended sentence.
Yes, suspended 9 months and 200 hours community service. Interesting picture here from in the Sun. But, this is interesting as well. I mean, it's quite a heavy sentence. What he did was fraud, and there's no doubt about that. But, of course, this comes amidst news of people who've committed over 500 burglaries and various crimes being let off at the next burglary they've come to. It's a very strange story, and a great pity, really, for such a young entrepreneur. Now he's going to go off and protect ships from piracy, which is interesting. Of course, he used to be a Marine as well, so a disappointing story, that, to be honest.
OK, now I'm sorry to end on a disappointing note, but we really must leave it there. Jamie, thanks very much indeed. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Let's bring in Charlie, who's, you may have noticed, shuffled in next to you. Good to see you.
Hello.
And Fernando Torres, making it into the headlines
today. Could be disappointing news for Liverpool, this. At the moment, we don't quite know which way this is going, but Liverpool have, at the moment, officially rejected a transfer request from Fernando Torres. The striker has asked to leave the club after interest from Chelsea. Liverpool say they expect Torres to honour the commitment he made to the club when he signed a new improved contract. That was back in 2009. England and Australia will play each other in 10 consecutive tests, home and away in 2013 and then 14. And that could be followed by a further 5-match series in 2015, after it was confirmed the dates of the next Ashes series down under are to be brought forward by a year. The changes come about because of the timing of the 2015 World Cup, which is also scheduled to be held in Australia. And in the women's final at the Australian Open in Melbourne, Li Na, the first Chinese player to reach a Grand Slam singles final, is playing the third seed Kim Clijsters. Early stages, they've been on court just a few minutes, and Kim Clijsters 2-1 up. And she's aiming for a 4th major title, but first in Australia. Keep you right up to date with their progress.
Yes, and this time tomorrow we'll be all biting our nails because Andy Murray will be out there in the final. His big chance to win a Grand Slam. It's the 3rd Grand Slam final he's been in. Here with us is the former tennis player and now sports psychologist Amanda Owens to talk about his chances. First of all, do you think that this time round he's actually going to clinch it? This is his big chance.
Yes, I do. I think that he's got his best opportunity, but also watching the match yesterday, he played superbly on the critical points, and from a psychological perspective that's really important, obviously, because in tennis every point counts, but it's the critical points that matter.
OK, so it's not, I mean, just winning, presumably, is the psychological boost and also, you know, the practical boost that you need. But you think that the crucial points, that if you manage to clinch those ones, it makes a big difference to you psychologically? Yes,
and yesterday Murray played the critical points unbelievably well. And, you know, to pull back and to win the second set 7-6, you know, he did really, really well. I think he can do it tomorrow. I hope, you know, he needs to be able to focus on his strengths, what he does. And he mentioned he reverted back to plan B, but in fact he played his own game when he did plan B. So one hopes that tomorrow he can play his own game, and I think he stands a very, very good chance.
What about the fact, though, Amanda, that Novak Djokovic has been in this situation before and actually won the Australian Open a few years ago, whereas Murray has twice made it to the final and lost? How much of an advantage does that give to Djokovic?
It does give him a slight advantage, yes. And also they have been practicing together, so they know each other's game.
Very old friends, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. So it's going to be very tough for Murray, but I do believe, watching him, and I think 2 years ago I was on and I said that he will win a Grand Slam title, and I do believe that tomorrow could be his opportunity. I think Djokovic does have that experience of being in the finals, and indeed, you know, Murray last year had a very, very tough final against Federer. I mean, Federer was playing sublime tennis, but I think Murray has matured. He's also worked psychologically on his game, and emotionally yesterday it really showed again on the critical points.
One key fact as well is that in the last 3 times they've played, Murray has beaten Djokovic. 7
Even though
times
he's
they've
2
played.
seeds higher than him as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
But that's good for your head, isn't it?
That's
getting you mentally prepared.
Yeah, absolutely.
OK, Amanda, it's nice to see you. Let's hope you're right. Fingers crossed for tomorrow. Weather?
For tomorrow is looking absolutely fantastic.
Over the north of Beijing, as the visitor